Welcome to Podcast, the Business of Dentistry podcast, brought to you by Practice Plan. Podcast delivers the best business advice, real-life stories, and practical hints and tips to make your practice a more profitable and sustainable business. And now, here's your host.
Hello, my name is Simon Cosgrove. I'm a regional manager with Wesleyan Financial Services. I'm joined today by Chris Nicholson, who's a regional support manager at Practice Plan. And we're just going to talk through changes and implications for dental practices following the budget in October. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, Chris is going to talk us through what he's heard from practices as he's talked to them, their thoughts and plans for the future. I'll talk through things from a financial planning perspective. So Chris, how are things with practices? What's the general thoughts and feelings out there at the moment?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yeah, well, it's a bit of a difficult one, isn't it? It's going to be a challenging time for practices. Come April, it's a bit of a double whammy with the minimum wage increase and the NI increase, and a lot of practices are kind of worried about that. And how we help them with Practice Plan is obviously we can sit down and have a look at what those increases look like and give some guidance around the payroll costs. And I think a lot of practices in the past have just kind of gone, oh, do you know what? I'll do a 3% increase. I'll do a 5% increase. But now it's going to have to be a bit more structured than that. There's going to have to be a bit more kind of sense behind it. And working out exactly what that cost of business is going to be like in April and how they can really sort of compete really in the ever-growing market of dentistry where the operating costs are going up. We know dental materials are going to increase. I'm hearing that lab bills are going to looking like they're going to go up again by 20%. Just rising costs all over the place. The electricity, energy in general is just going up. So to maintain the high standards that they want to maintain and compete in that market, it's hard. And I think what we do at Practice Plan here is kind of look after them. We do sit down, we look at their financials as best we can and try and help them out. Also on that as well, with the increase in wages, there is a ripple effect with that as well, because the minimum wage is going up. That does have a ripple effect with the team. So they're also going to have to look at increasing wages for the rest of the team members to maintain fairness and the team morale. So yeah, there's a lot to go at. But one thing that I have noticed, and a lot of practices are coming back to me and saying that the increase in income is going well. I think the demand for modern treatments now is more so than ever. Cosmetic procedures and clear aligners and other such things are massively taking off. And the new technologies, the new marketing and the training, although that does come with an operational cost for the practice, they are paying off quite well, and a lot of practices are seeing an increase in their income, which is set to continue, which is all good. And I know you guys, Simon, help practices with that quite a lot. So if a practice does come to me and they're kind of saying, look, what do I do if I'm my increased income? How do you guys help them out with that?
Very carefully is the honest answer. The budget also introduced, didn't really introduce, but kind of froze the income tax bands. So as income is increasing, both to practices and individually to people, with even cost of living rises, but increased income to practices, more and more people might find themselves paying a higher rate of tax as a result. So they might become 40, maybe even 45% taxpayers. So that's going to be one of the implications. Another implication, particularly on the dentist side of things, whether you're a principal or an associate, is once you start to earn over 100,000, then you start to lose your personal allowance. So the personal allowance is the amount that you're allowed to earn before you start paying any tax at all. But once you start to earn over 100,000, that starts to reduce by a pound for every £2 that you earn over 100,000. it's kind of a stealth tax that not many people know about. Accountants are quite hot on it. So if you've got an accountant, they're kind of the people to talk to about it. But yeah, it kind of increases your tax bill even without changing tax bands. So that can have quite a hefty effect on people's tax bills. So one of the ways that people can get, not round it, but mitigate the impact of this is through pension contributions. And this is something that we talk to dentists and dental practices a lot, because the benefits of pension contributions are twofold, really. The first and most obvious one is you're saving for retirement. So that just ensures that you can save tax efficiently and that you will have a pension, a fund to provide you with capital or income when you retire, to give you the flexibility to retire when you want to retire, rather than when the state wants you to retire or the NHS wants you to retire if you've had any NHS income in the past. But the other benefit of pension contributions is they reduce your taxable income today in this tax year. So if you were to make £1,000 pension contribution, for example, a gross pension contribution, then your taxable income would reduce by £1,000 in that year. So that just means that your taxable income, the amount of income on which you can be taxed in a year, is reducing whilst you're also saving for retirement. So that's quite an effective way of reducing income if we find that the income is increasing and it's causing a bit of an issue as far as tax is concerned. In terms of fees then, Chris, with talking to practices, are they considering raising fees? How's that going down? Are they going to kind of use that as a way of mitigating the national insurance contributions?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of practices are looking at that. When I'm giving guidance to my practices, I'm kind of saying look at what that cost of business actually looks like, and seeing where you can offset those fees. And I know practice owners are, very wary of increasing fees in a dental practice. They think they may lose patients, but from my experience, as long as they're done correctly and it's articulated clearly, then most patients are completely understanding of an increase every year. And I think it's in the past we have faced the same sort of increases where they're looking at 10-15%, but I think now more than ever, they are going to increase. They have to, really, to maintain the high standard of dentistry that these practices are known for. So yeah, there is going to be some increases there, but I think with a plan in place, a lot of these practices and a lot of these patients won't see the cost as a massive increase. It will just be in line with inflation and in line with the government's sort of new legislations in place.
So it shouldn't be a big deal as far as patients are concerned, do you think? Or
no, I don't think so. No, personally, I think with them putting the their sort of private prices up, or the treatments and things like that, that would mean that they are going to be able to buy the best sort of dental materials, are going to be able to use the best labs, dental labs in the areas, and give the best quality treatment and products to their patients. And I think that's overall really what should be done in dentistry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and maintain that high standard. So yeah, it's at this minute in time, there's a lot of practice owners who have probably feared it and gone, oh my God, what am I going to do? But when they sit down with some of us RSMs, a practice plan, and look at it, they can actually go, oh, you know what, actually, yeah, that makes sense. Doing this makes sense. And then that makes it so much easier when they're talking to their patients, and they can say, these are the reasons behind it. And majority of patients will go, yeah, I get it, I understand. So yeah,
I guess that's the secret, isn't it? Being able to explain it to patients and the reasons why, and then they kind of understand it. If people understand the reasons why, then they tend to go with it a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that's the thing. If they just see the price go up and they don't understand the reason why, and when they ask, then it's not being articulated in a clear manner, then they just feel like they're being fleeced, I suppose.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, they're not really. It's just the way it's been put across, and I think that's massively important. And I think what we do as Practice Plan is trying to bridge that gap between the owners and the patients, and articulate that in a right manner. Which is good.
Just while we're talking about practice owners, one of the other big things that the budget changed was the business asset disposal relief. So this is the amount of capital gains tax that people pay, that practice owners pay on the sale of a practice. A lot of practice owners, a lot of principals that I talk to, this is one of their main sources of capital and income in retirement. The amount, so at the moment, the first £1 million is taxed at a reduced rate of 10% of any practice sale. From April in 2025, that's going to increase to 14%, and then the following year it's going to rise to 18%. So what practice owners might find going forward, depending on when they're looking to sell, is a reduced profit, if you like. So it's something that practice owners will need to consider and factor into any plans. So obviously talk to accountants, talk to financial advisors, just to make sure that the reduced amount of profit, if you like, and the increased amount of tax is built into their goals, their objectives, when they're working out when and how they would like retirement to look. So that's the other thing that kind of a big deal that people are talking about, that I've been talking to.
That is a big deal, really. I wonder how many practice owners are aware of it or have even considered it.
Not many from the ones I've spoken to. A few I've spoken to their accountants already, so a few are on top of it. But it's something that if you're looking to retire in the next 5, maybe even 10 years, it's a consideration. Just one final thing that I wanted to mention that I've been mentioning as I've been round practices, is just about locum cover. A lot of practices, in my experience, try and keep the costs of a locum in-house. So if a associate goes off ill, then they'll say, don't worry about it, we'll kind of pay for the locum for you. With these increased costs, a lot of practices might just want to rethink that, because obviously if they're paying increased national insurance, it might be a struggle to then pay for a locum on top of things if an associate is unable to work. One option for that could be associates paying into an insurance policy which pays for a locum, so that would save the practice from having to fund anything. The associates fund it. It's a comparatively small premium, but it's just an additional cost at the moment that practices probably don't want. So it's just an additional thing that practices might not have thought about. So then the main things that kind of spring to mind from my perspective. Anything else on your side of things, Chris, or is that enough?
I think that's probably about it. I would say, the main thing I would say to practice owners is just think about what your cost of business is going to be like come April, and just make sure that you're 100% correct, and then set your fees accordingly. And as long as that's articulated well to your patients, I think they will be absolutely fine with it.
I think just one final point, just adapting any business plans in relation to these changes, from budgetary changes, will come with their own individual tax and pension considerations that just require individual analysis from accountants and financial advisors. So just make sure it is the right thing from your perspective. So just take professional advice. That's it from us. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to you again soon.